the disabled alien princess was overlooked by all, until a human stepped forward and said bond with. Light from 1,000 worlds reflected off polished floors, and the air carried soft sounds of many languages spoken at once. This place decided the future of empires. It was where alliances were formed, bonds were declared, and the fate of entire species could change in a single moment. Princess Salith stood near the outer edge of the hall. She was dressed in the formal colors of her people, long flowing fabric that shimmered like deep water. The symbols of her royal house were woven carefully into the cloth, marking her as the future ruler of one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. By tradition, she should have been standing at the center, surrounded by attention and respect. Instead, most delegates looked past her. Some glanced briefly, then turned away. Others whispered quietly, their eyes filled with judgment they tried to hide but failed. A few did not bother pretending at all. To them, Salith was already decided, already dismissed. She knew why. Salith's condition was no secret. Since early childhood, a rare neurological disorder had weakened her control over the natural energy her species used for movement and communication. While others of her kind could glide effortlessly or stand for hours with perfect balance, Salith needed a slim support frame built into her ceremonial platform. It helped her remain upright and steady, but it was visible. And in the galaxy, visibility mattered. Strength was admired, perfection was expected, anything less was seen as failure. Salith kept her posture calm, her expression controlled. Years of training had taught her how to appear composed even when her body felt heavy and tired. Still, each ignored glance felt sharper than the last. This ceremony was meant to be her moment. The convergence was not only political, it was cultural, symbolic. Certain bonds formed here could unite worlds for generations. For royal heirs like Salith, bonding was both a duty and a test. It showed whether others believed you were worthy to stand beside them. She already knew the answer they had chosen. Across the hall, representatives from powerful species gathered in small groups. Tall crystalline beings discussed energy trade. Armored figures from warrior races spoke of defense pacts. Elegant starborn delegates laughed softly as they compared achievements. None approached her. Even members of her own delegation avoided meeting her eyes. They stood a short distance away, speaking carefully as if afraid her presence might weaken their position. Salith did not blame them, not fully. They had been raised in the same culture. They feared the same judgment. To them, her condition was not just a personal challenge. It was a risk to their entire future. She looked toward the central platform, where the bonding declarations would soon begin. The idea of standing there alone filled her chest with a quiet ache. She had prepared herself for this possibility, but preparation did not make it painless. Her thoughts drifted back to her childhood. She remembered struggling to keep pace with others, falling while they rose, watching teachers exchange worried looks. She remembered overhearing council members suggest alternatives, replacements, quiet plans made behind closed doors. And she remembered deciding, very young, that if she could not be strong in body, she would be strong in mind. She studied history while others trained physically. She learned diplomacy, strategy, and empathy. She listened more than she spoke. She learned how to understand people, not just command them. Yet none of that seemed to matter now. A low tone echoed through the hall. The ceremony was beginning. Delegates moved toward the central area, standing in orderly ranks. Names were called, species stepped forward. Some bonds were formed quickly, confidently. Cheers followed. Energy fields flared as ancient rituals activated. Salith waited. Her name had not been called yet, but she knew it would be soon. She imagined the silence that would follow, the polite pauses, the awkward glances, the ceremonial words spoken with empty respect. She tightened her hands slightly, steadying herself. Then something unexpected happened. A ripple of movement passed through the far entrance of the hall. Heads turned. Conversations paused. A group of newcomers entered, guided by convergence officials. They were shorter than many species present, soft-skinned, without natural armor, glowing energy, or visible weapons. Humans. They had only recently joined the galactic community. Many still saw them as curious but insignificant. Their technology was practical, not elegant. Their biology was fragile by most standards. They lacked the obvious strengths others valued. Salith had studied them quietly long before this day. She found them interesting, adaptable, persistent. They survived on a world that should have broken them many times over. The human delegation moved carefully, eyes wide with controlled curiosity. At their front walked a man in a simple formal uniform. His posture was straight but not stiff. His eyes were alert, taking in everything without arrogance. His name, Salith knew, was Elia's ward. He was not royalty. Humans did not choose leaders the same way, but he carried authority in his calm movements, in the way others looked to him for guidance. The ceremony continued. More bonds were announced. Salith's name echoed softly through the hall. Princess Salith of the Aurelian Continuum. The silence arrived exactly as she had imagined. No one stepped forward. The pause stretched. It was not cruel, but it was final. Officials exchanged uncertain looks. This outcome was rare but not unheard of. Some heirs were deemed unsuitable. The galaxy moved on. Salith lowered her gaze slightly, accepting what she could not change. Then footsteps echoed. They were human footsteps, steady, unhurried. Murmurs spread as Elia's ward walked forward, leaving his delegation behind. Every eye followed him. Confusion rippled through the hall. He stopped a respectful distance from Salith's platform and bowed slightly, as humans did. "I step forward," he said clearly, his voice carrying without effort, "to declare intent to bond." Gasps followed. Some delegates stood straighter. Others leaned forward in disbelief. Salith looked up, her breath catching despite herself. Elia's met her eyes. There was no pity in his expression, no hesitation, only focus and something quieter, harder to name. "With Princess Salith," he continued. The hall erupted into noise. Officials rushed to consult ancient protocols. Delegates argued in sharp whispers. Some laughed openly, assuming this was a misunderstanding. Others looked angry, as if a rule had been broken. Salith's thoughts raced. This could not be real. Humans barely understood the convergence traditions. Bonding was complex, demanding. It was not a gesture made lightly. Elias remained still, hands relaxed at his sides. An elder from the convergence stepped forward. "Human representative," the elder said carefully, "you are aware of the implications of this declaration." "I am," Elias replied. "I have studied them. You understand the challenges this bond may present." "I do. And you proceed willingly." "Yes." Salith found her voice soft but steady. "Why?" The question surprised even her. It was not part of the ceremony, but she needed to know. Elias turned fully toward her. "Because I believe strength takes many forms," he said simply. "And because being overlooked does not mean being unworthy." The words settled into the hall like quiet gravity. No one spoke for a long moment. Salith felt something shift inside her, a cautious warmth, hope, fragile but real. The elder studied them both. "The bond declaration will be evaluated," the elder said at last. "Proceed with preliminary alignment." Energy fields activated around the central platform. The process had begun. As Salith adjusted her stance, her support frame humming softly, she realized something important. For the first time in this hall, she was not standing alone. And the galaxy, whether it wished to or not, was about to see what humans truly meant when they chose to stand beside someone. The ceremony moved forward, but nothing would ever feel the same again. The energy field around the central platform shimmered softly, like light passing through water. It did not glow brightly or flash with power, but it was steady, calm, and balanced. That alone drew attention. Many bonds created visible bursts of force, dramatic and loud. This one did not. It felt controlled. Princess Salith stood within the field, her breathing slow and careful. The support frame at her back adjusted gently, responding to small shifts in her posture. Across from her stood Elia's ward, hands relaxed, eyes focused on the faint symbols forming in the air between them. Around the hall, the noise slowly faded. Delegates stopped arguing. Whispers died down as something unexpected began to happen. The bond alignment should have resisted. According to long-held belief, Salith's condition should have caused instability. Energy bonds required balance between physical capability, neural control, and emotional regulation. Her people had always assumed that her disorder would disrupt the process, but the field remained stable. An official stepped closer, scanning readings with visible confusion. "The synchronization is holding," they said quietly. Another elder frowned. "That should not be possible at this stage." Elias felt a subtle pressure, not painful, more like standing in a strong wind. He adjusted his stance slightly without thinking, grounding himself the way he had learned during long hours of human training. Humans did not rely on natural energy fields like many species. They relied on awareness, muscle memory, and adaptation. Salith noticed the change. She felt it through the bond field like a quiet correction. Where her energy wavered, something met it, supported it, steadied it. Her eyes widened slightly. For the first time in her life, she was not compensating alone. Images flickered at the edge of her perception. Not visions exactly, but impressions. Calm determination. A sense of purpose shaped by hardship, not ease. She felt memories that were not hers, humans rebuilding after disaster, standing again and again despite loss. Elias felt impressions as well, deep thought, careful patience, years of watching, learning, enduring quiet judgment, strength built inward instead of outward. Neither spoke. Words were unnecessary. The elder raised a hand. "Proceed to motion alignment." This was the stage where many bonds failed. It required both participants to move in harmony with the energy field. For Salith, this was always the hardest part of any formal ritual. She hesitated. Elias noticed instantly. He turned slightly, not breaking protocol but shifting his position so he was closer within Salith's line of sight. "Take your time," he said quietly, not amplified, just for her. She nodded. Slowly she moved. The support frame adjusted, but the field reacted first. It softened around her, responding to Elia's presence. When her balance faltered, the energy did not spike. It flowed. Murmurs rose again, this time filled with uncertainty instead of dismissal. "This is not dominance-based," a crystalline delegate whispered. "It is cooperative." "That violates established models," another replied. Salith completed the motion. The field pulsed once, steady and even. The official's voice trembled slightly. "Motion alignment successful." Silence followed, heavy, disbelieving. From the Aurelian delegation, faces shifted. Some looked relieved, others looked afraid. The bond had not failed. Worse, from their perspective, it had succeeded in a way they did not understand. The elder lifted a data slate. "Preliminary bond acknowledged. Full confirmation will require extended evaluation." That was expected. Bonds between unfamiliar species always took time, but the tone had changed. This was no longer a formality. It was a concern. As the field dissolved, Salith felt the faintest sense of loss, like warmth fading. She steadied herself, then looked at Elias. "Thank you," she said quietly. He inclined his head. "You did the hard part." She almost smiled. The ceremony continued, but the focus had shifted. Eyes followed Salith and Elias as they stepped away from the platform. Conversations resumed, sharper now, filled with speculation. Some delegates approached the humans, asking pointed questions masked as curiosity. "Do humans often form bonds with unknown outcomes?" one asked. Elias answered calmly. "We form partnerships based on trust and potential." Another delegate scoffed. "Potential is unreliable." "So is tradition," Elias replied evenly. Salith watched these exchanges with interest. Humans spoke differently. They did not posture or threaten. They stated their views plainly and stood by them. Later, in a quieter corridor reserved for bonded candidates, Salith rested on a low support seat. The events of the day weighed on her, but beneath the exhaustion was something unfamiliar: anticipation. An Aurelian council member approached, their expression tight. "Princess, this situation is complicated." "It always was," Salith replied gently. "They will question your capacity more than ever now." "They already did." The council member hesitated, then lowered their voice. "The human bond may place additional scrutiny on our people." Salith met their gaze. "Or it may change how the galaxy sees us." The council member had no answer. When they left, Elias remained standing nearby, giving her space but not distance. "You are not afraid," Salith observed. "I am cautious," Elias said. "But fear usually comes from things we refuse to understand." She considered that. "Most see my condition and stop there." "Humans are familiar with limits," he said. "We spend our lives working around them." Their conversation was interrupted by a sharp, alert tone. A diplomatic challenge had been issued. A minor coalition, offended by the Bond Declaration, demanded a capability review. It was a legal move meant to expose weakness. If Salith failed, the bond could be nullified. Salith's heart tightened. This was exactly what she had feared. Elias read the data quickly. "They want a response within the hour." "I cannot perform the standard demonstrations," she said quietly. "You know that." "I know," Elias replied, "but we don't have to." She looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "They expect a display of force," he said. "We will show function instead." The review chamber was smaller but filled quickly. Observers crowded the upper levels. The coalition representatives stood confidently, certain of the outcome. The test began. Instead of raw energy output, Elias requested a problem simulation: emergency response, resource allocation, evacuation strategy under pressure. The chamber hesitated, then complied. It was allowed, though uncommon. Salith's eyes lit with focus. Together, they worked through the scenario. Salith analyzed variables, predicted outcomes, and coordinated responses. Elias executed adjustments, compensating for gaps, adapting plans in real time. They moved as one. The observers leaned forward. When the simulation ended, the chamber displayed success metrics far above average. Silence followed. The coalition representative's voice was strained. "This was not the intended measure." "It was a real one," Elias replied. The challenge was withdrawn. As Salith left the chamber, she felt the weight of countless eyes, but this time it was different. There was no dismissal, only uncertainty and something close to respect. That night, alone in her quarters, Salith looked out at the stars beyond the station's viewport. For the first time, the future did not feel like a narrow path she had to survive. It felt open. And somewhere in the vast, watching galaxy, the idea of strength was quietly, permanently changing. The days after the capability review passed quickly, but the tension did not fade. If anything, it grew stronger. News of the unusual bond spread across the convergence station and beyond it, traveling through data streams to distant worlds. Every species seemed to have an opinion, and most of them were divided. Some called the bond an error in protocol. Others whispered that humans had found a way to exploit weaknesses in ancient systems. A few, quieter voices suggested something more troubling: that the galaxy's old ideas of strength were incomplete. Princess Salith felt all of it like a constant pressure around her. She moved through the station with calm grace, but inside her thoughts were busy. Wherever she went, eyes followed. Not the dismissive looks from before, but careful ones, measuring ones. Elias walked beside her often now, not as a guard or handler, but as a partner. Their bond was still in its early stage, yet it had already changed how both of them experienced the world. Salith noticed that her movements felt slightly easier when he was near. not because her condition had vanished, but because her awareness had sharpened. She adjusted sooner, compensated smarter. Elias noticed changes too. He felt more patient, more focused. The constant background stress he had carried as a representative of a new species had eased. When he thought through problems, solutions came faster, clearer. They did not speak about these changes much. They did not need to. The Convergence Council announced the next phase of evaluation, extended integration. This stage tested how bonded individuals functioned over time under varied conditions. It was long, detailed, and often uncomfortable. For Salith, it was familiar territory. She had lived under evaluation her entire life. For Elias, it was new. The first test was environmental. A controlled chamber adjusted gravity, atmosphere, and sensory input to match different worlds. Many bonds struggled here, especially between species with different biological needs. As the chamber shifted, Salith's support frame adapted automatically. Elias adjusted manually, bending his knees slightly, breathing slower. The gravity increased. Salith felt the strain immediately. Her muscles resisted unevenly, signals misfiring. She focused, grounding herself mentally. Elias noticed the change in her posture. Without touching her, he adjusted his position again, subtly shifting the shared energy field. It was not conscious magic or technique. It was attention. The field responded. Sensors across the chamber flickered, then stabilized. Observers exchanged looks. Human adaptability is compensating, one noted. No, another replied. It is synchronizing. The test continued through heat, cold, low light, high noise. Each time there were moments of strain, but no collapse, no failure. Afterward, Salith rested, exhaustion visible but controlled. Elias handed her a container of nutrient fluid without a word. She accepted it with a small nod. "You do not push me," she said softly. "I trust you to know your limits," he replied. "I just help you work within them." That answer stayed with her. Later, they faced a social integration test. This was less visible but no less difficult. They were placed in a simulated diplomatic conflict involving multiple factions, conflicting values, and limited resources. Salith took the lead naturally. She listened, asked careful questions, and identified hidden motivations. Elias supported her, stepping in when emotional tension rose, reframing arguments in practical terms humans favored. The simulated factions responded. Agreements formed. When the test ended, the evaluation score exceeded expectations again. The murmurs grew louder. "Her condition should limit her," one observer said, frustration clear. "It does not," another replied. "It refines her." Between tests, Salith returned to her quarters. The space had been adjusted slightly since her arrival, human modifications added quietly by Elia's team. Handholds placed at precise angles. Lighting softened to reduce sensory strain. Nothing intrusive, everything optional. She noticed all of it. "You did this," she said when Elias joined her later. "I asked permission," he replied. "From the station, not from you," she smiled faintly. "You should have asked me." "I know," he said. "Next time." The word "next time" echoed in her thoughts after he left. Meanwhile, not everyone was willing to wait and observe. A powerful alliance, known for enforcing traditional standards, began lobbying the council. They claimed the bond set a dangerous precedent. If perceived weakness was accepted, they argued galactic order would weaken. Salith was summoned to a private hearing. The chamber was smaller, colder. The council members sat in a raised arc, their expressions carefully neutral. "Princess Salith," one began, "your performance has been unexpected." Salith inclined her head. "I have always been capable. I simply perform differently." "Your bond relies heavily on human adaptation," another said. "What happens if that support is removed?" Salith did not hesitate. "Then I continue as I always have, but better for having learned another way." Elias stood beside her, silent. The council exchanged looks. "Do you believe," the first asked, "that this bond changes your people's future?" "Yes," Salith replied, "because it changes how we define value." The words hung in the air. The council dismissed them without a decision. Outside the chamber, Elias exhaled slowly. "You handled that well." She met his eyes. "I was honest." That honesty would be tested sooner than expected. An alert sounded across the station. A distant trade vessel had suffered a systems failure while docked at the outer ring. Power fluctuations threatened life support. The situation required immediate coordination between multiple species. The council hesitated. Response teams were divided. Conflicting protocols caused delays. Salith stepped forward. "Let us assist," some objected. "This was not part of evaluation, this was real." "That is exactly why we should," Elias said. Time was running out. Permission was granted. They entered the control hub, surrounded by chaos. Alarms blared. Data streams overlapped. Salith took in the information rapidly, her mind sorting patterns. Elias relayed commands, his voice calm, cutting through confusion. They coordinated engineering teams, rerouted power, stabilized atmosphere controls. When Salith's focus wavered from strain, Elias adjusted the plan, giving her seconds to recover without stopping progress. Crew members watched in disbelief. The crisis was resolved. Lives were saved. When the final system stabilized, silence filled the hub. Then quiet acknowledgement, not applause, something deeper, respect. Later, as reports circulated, opinions shifted, not all at once but enough. Salith sat alone afterward, her body tired but her mind clear. She thought of all the times she had been told what she could not do, all the paths closed before she had a chance to walk them. Elias joined her, sitting nearby. "The galaxy is watching now," he said. "It always was," she replied. "It just did not see clearly," he nodded. Their bond deepened quietly, not through ceremony but through shared action, shared trust. And somewhere beyond the station, the idea that strength had only one shape continued to break, piece by piece. The respect Salith and Elias earned after the docking crisis did not bring peace. It brought attention, and attention in the galaxy often invited resistance. Some praised their cooperation as proof of progress. Others saw it as a threat to traditions that had ruled for thousands of cycles. The most powerful opposition came quietly. A coalition of elder species began to move behind formal words and polite smiles. They did not challenge the bond directly anymore. That had already failed. Instead, they questioned leadership, influence, and future authority. If Salith was to inherit her throne one day, they intended to make sure her path was blocked long before that moment arrived. The pressure started with subtle limits. Access to certain council briefings was delayed. Invitations arrived late or not at all. Decisions were made without Salith's presence, then presented as final. None of it broke protocol. All of it sent the same message. "You are tolerated, not accepted." Salith noticed, of course, she always did, but she did not react with anger. She reacted with patience. She observed patterns, mapped alliances, and listened more than she spoke. Elias watched closely. Humans had learned long ago that quiet exclusion could be more dangerous than open conflict. "They are testing you," he said one evening as they walked through a low-traffic corridor. "They always have," Salith replied. "The difference is that now they are unsure." "That makes people careless," Elias said. His words proved true sooner than expected. A formal challenge was announced by the coalition. This time it was public, legal, and difficult to refuse. They called it a leadership trial, an ancient evaluation meant to measure a future ruler's ability to protect their people during extreme crisis. Salith had studied these trials in history records. They were rarely used anymore. Too demanding, too revealing, too dangerous. The trial required a candidate to oversee a simulated multi-system emergency, while physically present in a command environment designed to overwhelm the senses. Most candidates relied on raw mental strength and physical endurance to push through. The coalition assumed Salith would fail. When the announcement was made, her own delegation reacted with alarm. Advisors urged caution. Some suggested withdrawal, claiming political reasons. Salith listened to all of them. Then she spoke. "I will accept." The room fell silent. "This trial was not designed with your condition in mind," one advisor said carefully. "It was not designed with fairness in mind either," Salith replied. "That has never stopped it before." Elias said nothing at first. When all eyes turned to him, he spoke calmly. "She will not face it alone." The coalition objected immediately. "This trial is for the candidate only." Salith raised her hand. "The bond allows shared operational support. That is within protocol." Reluctantly, the council agreed. The trial chamber was vast and dim. Light panels flickered unpredictably. Sound waves shifted without pattern. Gravity fluctuated in subtle waves meant to disrupt balance and focus. Salith entered the chamber slowly, her support frame adjusting in real time. Elias followed, carrying no visible tools, only a small human interface band on his wrist. The simulation began without warning. A dozen systems reported failure at once. Communications collapsed. Population centers flickered on and off the display. Alarms layered over each other, designed to overwhelm. Salith felt the strain immediately. Her condition reacted poorly to sudden sensory overload. Her breathing tightened, her focus threatened to fragment. Then the bond responded. Not by removing the pressure, but by organizing it. Elias' presence acted like a stabilizing point. He did not take control. He filtered information, prioritizing streams, adjusting inputs through human-designed algorithms that simplified chaos into manageable layers. Salith regained focus. She began issuing commands, her voice steady despite the storm around her. She delegated, anticipated secondary failures, redirected resources before collapse could spread. Minutes passed, then hours. The coalition observers grew tense. "This should have broken her by now," one muttered. Instead, Salith adapted. When her energy dipped, she paused strategically, allowing systems to run autonomously for seconds at a time. Elias supported without speaking, adjusting flows, maintaining stability. The simulation escalated again. A final scenario activated. A choice between saving two population centers with insufficient resources for both. Many candidates failed here, frozen by the weight of decision. Salith did not hesitate. She redirected evacuation protocols, minimized loss, and made the decision openly, explaining her reasoning clearly. It was not perfect. It was honest. The simulation ended. The chamber lights stabilized. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then the results appeared. The score surpassed historical averages, not by force, by efficiency, clarity, and resilience. The coalition had no words. Outside the chamber, reactions were mixed. Some were stunned into silence. Others turned away, already planning their next move. But the trial could not be undone. Salith's legitimacy had been proven in a way even tradition could not deny. Still, the galaxy was not finished testing her. Days later, real danger arrived. A frontier system reported an approaching unknown fleet. Not openly hostile but unresponsive. Panic spread quickly. Defensive alliances argued. Militarized species pushed for preemptive action. Salith was called into emergency council. Voices clashed. Fear drove decisions. "They must be stopped before they reach core space," one delegate argued. "We do not know their intent," Salith said calmly. "Assumption leads to conflict, and hesitation leads to destruction," another snapped. Elias stood beside her. "Humans have learned that first contact is where the future is decided," he said. "Not by strength but by choice." The council was divided. Time was limited. Salith requested permission to lead a communication attempt. Laughter followed. "Your condition makes you unfit for frontline diplomacy," a delegate said coldly. Salith met their gaze. My condition makes me careful, that is not a weakness. The vote was close. Permission was granted. Salith and Elias boarded a diplomatic vessel, small and lightly armed. As they approached the unknown fleet, tension filled the ship. Crew members trusted Salith after the trial, but fear lingered. The unknown vessels responded at last. Their species had been isolated, misunderstood, driven into defensive behavior by past encounters. They expected hostility. Salith listened, truly listened. She acknowledged fear without judgment, offered cooperation without demand. Elias translated concepts, bridging cultural gaps with human empathy and practical examples. Slowly, hostility faded. An agreement was reached. When the vessel returned, the council chamber was silent again. This silence was different. It was not disbelief. It was recognition. Not everyone approved. Some never would, but enough did. Later, in a quiet observation deck, Salith looked out at the stars. "They will keep testing me," she said. "Yes," Elias replied, "but now they know you endure." She considered that. "Not endure," she corrected softly. "Adapt," he smiled. The galaxy had tried to push her back into the shadows. Instead, it had revealed her strength to itself. And the idea that leadership required perfection was breaking, one decision at a time. The days after the first contact mission were strangely quiet. No alarms echoed through the convergence station. No urgent summons filled the halls. It was as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath, unsure how to react to what had just happened. Princess Salith felt the change most clearly in how people looked at her. They no longer looked past her. Delegates paused when she entered a chamber. Conversations softened instead of stopping. Some still carried doubt in their eyes, but it was no longer sharp or dismissive. It was thoughtful, careful. Elias noticed it too. Humans were used to being underestimated, but this was different. This was a slow, visible shift in how an entire civilization was being reevaluated. The Convergence Council announced the final phase of bond confirmation. This was the stage that made a bond permanent and recognized it across all member worlds. It was rarely denied once reached, but tradition demanded one last review. This time, the Council did not frame it as a test. They framed it as a question. "Does this bond," the Elder Counselor asked, "serve the future of the galaxy?" The chamber was full. More full than it had been for any previous bond confirmation in recent cycles. Representatives from distant systems attended remotely. Observers filled every tier. Salith stood calmly at the center, her support frame steady and quiet. Elias stood beside her, hands relaxed, posture open. The council invited testimony. One by one, voices rose. An engineer from the docking crisis spoke first, describing how Salith's leadership had saved lives without panic. A diplomat from the simulation review spoke of clarity and fairness under pressure. A representative from the isolated fleet spoke next. Their voice carried through translation fields. They spoke of being heard for the first time, of fear replaced by understanding. Finally, a member of Salith's own people stepped forward, one who had once doubted her. "We were wrong," they said simply. "Not about her condition, but about what it meant." Silence followed. The elder counselor turned to Salith. "Princess, do you wish to speak?" Salith considered the moment. All her life she had prepared speeches, carefully measured words meant to defend her existence. She did not use them now. "I was born with limits," she said calmly. "They shaped me. They taught me patience, awareness, and care. I did not overcome them, I learned from them." She gestured slightly toward Elias. "Humans did not fix me. They did not need to, they stood with me. That choice changed everything." She looked around the chamber. "If the galaxy fears difference, it will grow smaller. If it learns from difference, it will grow stronger." Elias spoke next, though no one had formally asked him to. "Humans are not the strongest," he said. "We know that, we break, we fail, we struggle. But when we choose someone, we do not measure them by what they lack. We ask what we can build together." The words spread through the chamber, quiet but powerful. The council withdrew to deliberate. Time stretched. Salith felt the familiar weight of waiting, but it was different now. She was not alone in it. Elias remained beside her, steady and present. At last, the council returned. The bond between Princess Salith of the Aurelian Continuum and Elias Ward of Humanity, the elder announced, is hereby recognized and confirmed. The chamber erupted not in cheers but in something deeper, a collective release, a sense of witnessing history. The bond field activated one final time, surrounding Salith and Elias in a gentle glow. It was not dramatic. It did not burn or surge. It settled. Salith felt it fully then, not as power but as connection. Awareness sharpened, balance deepened, not because she had changed but because she no longer carried everything alone. When the field faded, she stood taller than she ever had before. The title followed soon after. The Aurelian High Council, facing both internal pressure and external reality, formally recognized Salith as their future ruler without condition or exception. The announcement echoed across the galaxy. Reactions were mixed. Some celebrated, some protested. Some quietly began rethinking long-held beliefs. Humanity's status changed overnight. No longer the newcomers, no longer the curious species. They became known as the ones who bonded differently. Requests for human advisors increased. Joint projects formed. Cultural exchanges expanded. Humans did not dominate, they cooperated, and that unexpectedly made them influential. Salith began preparing for her future role in earnest. Her days filled with strategy sessions, cultural dialogues, and long discussions about reform. She insisted on changes. Accessibility standards across convergence facilities were updated. Evaluation systems were rewritten to account for diverse forms of capability. Leadership models expanded. There was resistance, of course. Change always met it. But now resistance had to argue against results. Elias remained at her side not as a ruler but as a partner. He challenged her when needed, supported her when required, stepped back when it was right. Their bond matured quietly, not through ceremony but through daily trust. One evening, as stars drifted slowly beyond the observation deck, Salith stood watching the lights of passing ships. Elias joined her, handing her a small data tablet. "What's this?" she asked. "A report," he said, "from a frontier world." "They've asked for help designing their first joint council," she smiled. "Send them guidance." "You'll be busy," he noted. She nodded. "That is what leadership is." She paused, then added, "Once I believed my future would be decided for me." "And now?" Elias asked. "Now," she said softly, "I decide it." The galaxy did not become perfect. Fear did not vanish. Prejudice did not disappear overnight. But something fundamental had shifted. The idea that worth could be measured by physical perfection weakened. The belief that leadership required dominance cracked, and in its place, a quieter truth began to spread. That strength could be supportive. That power could be shared. That sometimes the most important step forward came when someone others overlooked was finally seen. And when a human stepped forward and said, without hesitation, "Bond with me," the galaxy listened.